All right. Can you hear me a little better now? Okay. A few weeks ago, Kevin Guyver gave a Zoom presentation on flooding. He'd said, okay, I can do that. Got that. Good. So it's fit 3 Patrick. Fit the number 3. Yeah, you're muted. I can unmute. I'll ask you to unmute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a good presentation. I'd like to
G-
adapt some of it to the plan.
Okay, I can ask him if it's still available. I'm sure it is.
Thank you much.
Yeah, no problem. Do you have any specific questions about that or anything else that's been bothering you about your bylaw that you want answered that Kevin and we might not be able to answer now, but we can stew on before I get into what I was going to talk about?
Well, I appreciate that. Off the top of my head, I don't.
Okay.
The big question, and Tori is going to help us, I think. We're behind on doing the new plan.
Yeah.
The revised plan. So.
And Nate came back as your chair, right?
I'm sorry?
Nate Cleveland came back as your chair?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think it's very good. So we've got to have our meetings and get going again, but it's going to be a little difficult doing it, I think, over the Zoom or the web. But we'll try. But I'm all for trying to get a good portion of flood mitigation into the plan. So.
Yeah, well, Tori does emergency planning and some flood work, so she can definitely upgrade your flood resiliency element. that whole section. So
Yeah.
that shouldn't be a big deal. That'll be good to have updated.
Indeed, I thank you but I gotta get the information from
From
Kevin.
Kevin. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Thank you.
Okay, dokie. Well, I'll quickly go over this. It's not too big a deal. The first thing I should tell you is the meeting I did before this was about the White River floodplain map update that's happening right now, which is good. Unfortunately, it's only for the first, second, and third branches and the upper White River. But that includes parts of Braintree. Let me see if I can pull up that map for you right now.
We don't have too much of it, the branches, but
Right. No, you don't. Okay, let me open this too. So in yeah, it looks like let me share this.
although you're getting a lot of the runoff from us.
Yeah, no, that's true. Share screen. I'm going to share Adobe. Share. Fit width. So can you see this? This is Braintree right here.
Right.
So unfortunately, you do have some mapped floodplain right there, but it's not being updated in this update that's happening currently right now.
Aha, okay.
They are doing some other work over in the Waits and the Connecticut and the Black and the Ottaquechee, the upper Connecticut River up by the Wells and the Stevens as well. But it doesn't look like, whoops, let me go back. They're doing any work in Braintree here, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean we can't update the town plan, update your flood bylaw, because this is still mapped here and has requirements. And what I'll talk about right now is this is if you have folks who have houses that are near the floodplain, but for some reason are mapped into the floodplain and they don't think they're actually in it. So if you have a person who comes into the town office and says, I just got a letter from my bank and my bank says that I need flood insurance, but I'm pretty sure I'm pretty far up away from the river and I'm not in the floodplain. What they need to do is get what's called a LOMA. And LOMAs are for buildings built before the flood maps were created and use a concept called, and I'll show you this, lowest adjacent grade and ignore the basement. Now, in flood speak, LOMA stands for letter of map amendment. It doesn't change the map. Basically, all they do is they collect all these, and then when they go and they remap, they might change the mapping boundaries. I'll show you, mapping boundaries might change in Braintree. I'll show you an example where they changed in Plymouth, where they weren't actually doing a remapping project when they reissued the new maps. So I'll show you that in just a minute. A LOMA is not an elevation certificate, which is usually part of getting flood insurance. It's kind of a shortened version of an elevation certificate and records this lowest adjacent grade in reference to the BFE. Now, these are only for older buildings kind of before the 70s and 80s. They're not for newer buildings because you guys have had zoning and you shouldn't be allowing new buildings below the BFE with basements near the floodplain. So this is an example of what that lowest adjacent grade is for a building built before the floodplain map. Here's the, and then the new floodplain maps get created. Here's the base flood elevation. The lowest adjacent grade to it is above the BFE. So this building, even with a basement, gets called out of the floodplain, and they don't need flood insurance from the bank for their federally insured mortgage. Now, they may want, excuse me, to get flood insurance to protect them from flooding, but they aren't required to get it by the feds. So this is an example actually of my old house here in Plymouth, and I got a Loma. And before they revised the floodplain maps in 2007, the floodplain actually came all the way down here. This little blue area. Can you see that up there, Malcolm?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of odd because you look at this federal floodplain map. This is the floodplain map viewer that's on our website, which you can get to. I can show you how to get to that. This area was in the floodplain, but my house was here, and it was a very narrow floodplain, and I was up very high in comparison to the stream channel, so I got a Loma here. And you can look that up, and then when I got the Loma, when they went into revising, I got this in, I think, 2006-ish, and then they revised the floodplain maps in 2008, and they went through, even though they weren't doing a remapping, they looked at the values on my Loma, the lowest adjacent grade, and the stream channel values that were on my Loma, and they decided to change the floodplain all the way up back to here. So they may use some Lomas in Braintree to revise some of the boundaries. You can look up Lomas here. Whoops. Gotta move my little thing here. This was mine down here, and you can download it. And this is what one looks like. It tells you the address, it tells you what was removed, it tells you the value of the base flood elevation, so the height of the 1% annual chance flood event, which is that 100-year flood. And then it gives you the lowest adjacent grade, which in this case you can see is 6 feet higher. So the house gets removed. Let me look somewhere. All right, let me change my share here. New share. We're gonna go to Chrome, share, and then I'm gonna type in, and you can get to this anytime. Flood to rock. We're gonna put that into Google. And it says flooding and maps. That's the first link. And then right there, there's a, whoops. Oh, let me scroll down here and see if we can find it. Whoops. And if you scroll down, you see this map, but let's just click on view larger map. It'll be easier. And there it is. And now we can go look in Braintree. So right now we're in South Royalton. Let's zoom out. Not far to Braintree. There's Randolph. And here's Braintree. Doop, doop. Can you see that?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. So let's look at this. We're going to turn off the river corridors here and the streams. There we go. So let me make sure I'm in Braintree here. Yeah, I got a little far. All right, here's the town line. Oh, we got one. We have a winner. All right. So here's you know where that is.
Yep, that's
And the
on.
town office where's the town office? Oh, it's right. No, that's not it. The town office
Right.
no, that's too far. Where is it? Right here?
Just,
No.
just beyond the, up in here, I think. You're on 2A.
Oh, I'm in the wrong. Am I in the wrong spot? No. Okay. Yeah. All right.
The, trailer park.
Yeah.
It's in here someplace. I'm looking for the meat, slaughterhouse.
Yeah. Oh, that's the school right there. Okay. Yeah. All right. So anyway,
My question, I had asked Ken and
yeah.
it wasn't clear, the answer. The railroad and the road block the floodplain in here somewhat,
Mm-hmm.
but there's got to be some drainage from upland underneath the road and the railroad. So if the river gets high enough, the water will back up underneath the drain and into this area here, I suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are those and there's got to be drainage because this stream here comes down into the river.
Mm-hmm.
So when the river gets high enough, the White River gets high enough, it'll back up underneath here.
Yep.
But this is not shown as being in the floodplain.
Yeah, that sounds like some backwater flooding.
That's not
I get a
included.
lot of I get a lot of calls like that. Like after Irene, I got a lot of calls in the Woodstock area. Should I buy this house? Because I heard about flooding in Irene, and I'm like, it's not. And then people were asked, well, it's not in the floodplain map, so it's good. And I always say, well, the most important thing, even more important than the floodplain map, is have you talked to the owner or the neighbors, and what does the river do there? And if it floods at certain points, at certain times of year with certain, water events, then you should consider that. FEMA, because they're doing the whole nation, can't necessarily grab all of these interesting backwater flooding, flooding back under culverts, under railroads, under roads. They try to do the best they can. And that's why you have the ability to purchase flood insurance if you're outside of the floodplain. And you also kind of have the reversibility, which is what I'm talking about, to take your building out of the floodplain if it's up really high and FEMA didn't do detailed enough flood mapping to show that. So let's zoom in here. Sorry about that. That was a little fast. So here is the butcher. Here is the town office, the town garage, and those two little buildings. So we'll truck up here. Here's the Able Campground and the manufactured home park. And here's a Loma right here. This is a real interesting part of the map. A lot's going on here, so we'll look at it. So let's click on this Loma. All right, that's not it. And there we go. So this Loma is for 354 Mobile Acres Road. It's the maintenance building. It was done it was done very recently in 2019. And the structure was removed from the property only because the property is partially inundated. So that makes sense. We could look that up. But what's really interesting here, what I like about this spot, is it shows a lot of different things happening on the map. So the blue is the FEMA mapped 100-year, 1% annual chance. We also have the contours on there. This pink is the floodway, which is the fast flowing center portion of the 1% annual chance floodplain. So this is kind of where the water backs up and ponds and sits kind of still. This is what Kevin likes to call the death zone. This is where during a flood, the river might be actually flowing pretty fast in this area. Normally it's only flowing, in the stream channel, but when it really gets rolling during a flood, it may be moving in this pink part. The other that's kind of a safety way to remember it, but the main way they designate the floodway is if you fill in the floodplain on either side up to 1 foot, where does the water go? And this is the area that's the lowest in which it would go. So this is the main area for the water. But more importantly, and this is why LOMAs and asking your neighbor about floodplain, about the flooding in on a site, and considering flood insurance, even if you're not in the floodplain and required to get it, is that flood maps are created and then they don't change. Amendments, these LOMAs get submitted, but still the flood maps aren't changed until they do a big new free flood mapping project. But in between, the river might move a lot. So let's check that out. Boop, boop. So check this out. This is really pretty cool. All right, so we'll start up here. I'll turn off these contours. We don't really need those.
Well,
so this is
important, but go ahead.
What? Sorry, go ahead.
I think contours are important because
yes. Okay. All right. Well, they weren't doing that bad. So I was just turning them off because sometimes they slow down the draw, but it seems to be pretty fast. So this was the old stream channel that was probably mapped back in the late 90s, early 2000s. But you can see, and this stretch of the Upper White River watershed, it's been depositing and moving an awful lot. See, it used to go over here, and look at all this deposition that's happened. This huge side channel bar. Whoop. And then it was over here, but see, this is a classic inside bend, and it keeps cutting into this inside bend and then dropping sediment over here. So this stream channel is moving. It's moving a lot less down here, but see, it started that again. Here's an inside bend that it actually moved away from, maybe because it got armored by the state. But up here, it's moving a lot. The problem is that, look at this, the flood mapping hasn't moved with it. And right here, let's zoom in there. The stream channel now is actually outside of the map floodplain.
Right.
So that's not good. But that's why you would encourage maybe someone like this or people near this area on an inside bend to, think about that, think about maybe some mitigation strategies and purchase flood insurance, even if they're not required to by their bank by law. So that's a really good example.
But wouldn't the selling point be, we think you're in the floodplain, but the map is, you're outside in terms of the map, and therefore you get a lower rate on the flood insurance?
You got it. Yes, I forgot to mention that, Malcolm. That's a very important point. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's crazy not to, because flood insurance, when you're outside of the floodplain, but maybe near it, they're only going to rate you for being outside of the floodplain, and the annual cost of that is going to be roughly the same for a typical home insurance policy, like $500 to $1,000 a year. Not that much, relatively speaking, versus full-blown flood insurance if you're in the floodplain, which is more on the magnitude of property tax level, like $2,000 to $5,000 a year. So, you know, a magnitude of 10 different, easy, or sometimes even a magnitude of 20 to 100 different. It can be tens of thousands of dollars per year. So it's a very good idea if you're outside of the floodplain, but near, you know, an inside bend, get that flood insurance. It won't cost you very much, and it'll make a big difference if we get another Irene.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yes, super important. So let me see what else I wanted to go over in my little.
But if you're on, say on the other side of that, down near the, where you call the backwater, where that stream running in,
Yeah, here
wouldn't
or
those people on this side, also on the north side of the highway, or there's a railroad in here someplace. Railroad's here, I think.
yeah,
Wouldn't
here's
they
the
be
railroad.
able to get insurance?
Oh yeah, anybody who wants insurance can get it. One thing I always encourage, and Kevin will talk about this, in Vermont we've learned, I was mentioning this, inside bends. Are you near a confluence of a little stream that comes off a mountainside and ends up in the flat valley bottom? Any of these places, like these guys down here, they're not in the floodplain, but they're tight to it.
Yeah.
And they're on the inside of the railroad, you know,
Yeah.
so that railroad's kind of trapping them in this place. Get flood insurance. It's going to be cheap. It can't hurt. Even this guy, because this is, you can see, you like your contours, you can see this steep valley side stream roaring down, and then it hits the bottom. You know, what's going to prevent it from jumping over here? Maybe. But if this person has flood insurance, that may mitigate the costs of rebuilding if that does happen.
Right.
So that's a very good idea. Okay, let's look. Let me switch my back to here, share. All right, so we're back here. The nice thing now is, you were saying the contours were very useful. The nice thing now is, like all the Vermont ortho, the aerial photos we have that get taken every year, now the state of Vermont has taken elevation data from an airplane with a special camera that takes elevation data. So now we have this statewide, so you can use that to help your folks do lomas, figure out exactly how high they are really pretty quickly and much cheaper. So if they know they're way above the floodplain, they can have their engineer or surveyor, they don't even have to come to the house, which will save a bunch of money. And they can just use the contour data like we were using on the map and figuring out which is the closest, lowest one to the lowest adjacent grade of that house. And then if that's well above the BFE, if that's at least 1 foot or more above the BFE, then they can fill out the LOMA, just send it in, and they're good to go. Save some money on the LOMA application and get removed from the floodplain, but still buy cheaper rate flood insurance. So this is a little example of that. Here's that lowest natural grade. Here's the BFE. This is a basement. And again, this only applies to houses built before the floodplain was mapped. After the floodplain was mapped, building this below BFE is not allowed. So you can't do that. And then here's an example, like if your deck post is out in the BFE there, you're in trouble. You got to move it back here if you want to qualify to be out. So that's an example of how LOMAs work. Now we have that really nice contour data, or you can use the LiDAR points themselves that we use to generate the contour. then
Is
it's much easier.
I appear to be the only one on here, so I'll ask questions if you.
Yeah, go
Right.
ahead.
How accurate is it to the nearer tenth, the LiDAR?
It depends on, where's my little table on that? Most of Vermont has this QL2 data. So the 1 foot contour is within a third. If a 1 foot ruler is 30 centimeters, right?
Right.
Then the 1 foot contour is within a third of a foot in the right place. So it kind of moves within a third of the ruler on either side of that 1 foot, which isn't too bad. That's pretty close.
Right.
So that's the kind of absolute accuracy of these LiDAR points and contours. That was a good question. So yeah, it's really nice to have. If we go back to, let's switch back to here. Boop. We can zoom.
This appears to be from some document, what you were just pointing out.
Yeah.
What document is that?
Yeah, I can send it to you. It's a little how to do LOMAs if you have LiDAR from the feds.
And LiDAR is all through Vermont, is it?
Yes. Yep. Yeah,
Really?
It's the entire state. So you can see it here. So I'm waiting for it to redraw. This is it's drawing these contours. So this is the contours that are showing here. It hasn't redrawn yet. This is 710. I think this is, let me zoom out here. Yeah, this is 800. So these are, come on. So 20, 40, 60, 80. Let's zoom in here and see if we can get them to draw again. Come on. This is an automated map service, so I might have to turn them off and on here. Maybe they'll come back. But yeah, it's really nice. Have you ever played with like the ANR Natural Resources Atlas or any of the maps on our website?
I have not, because my computer's been very slow.
Been very slow, yeah. Well, if you, I don't know, when the library reopens or whatever, once everybody's all vaccinated, I'm sure they'll start doing that again, and you can just mask up and go play with the library computer. But
well, I should be able to do it. I don't know why my library won't download faster. I mean,
yeah. Well, it's hard because there are so many different things. Like I have a really fast connection through EC Fiber at work, and this is a fiber connection at my home in Plymouth. I'm at home in Plymouth, and I have VTEL down from Springfield, and you can see it's working really good. But for some reason, this contour map service, it's on a different server. It's not running very fast. It's got a lot of contours in it, and it's just kind of crapped out right now, which is what I was afraid of. That stuff like that happens all the time because there's so many different pieces of data and servers and these online tools, and it's not always your fault, or your computer's fault. So just remember that. But yeah, the key to remember is, if you just type in maps and maybe even Two Rivers, let's try that. Let's see what comes up. Maps, Two Rivers. No, maybe you don't want to do that. Let's type our initials. I'm just trying to, yeah. So type maps and our initials, and then click on that link. And then there's our regional future land use, our energy planning map, a protected lands map. We can open that up. That's pretty cool. Just click on those. The flooding map was at the top. Here's my neck of the woods. We'll go up to your neck of the woods. And it was just telling me that a layer was drawing slow. So here's West Braintree, and this shows all sorts of different stuff. We'll flip this over. In purple, it's the use value appraisal parcels. So that's current use. These are the people all in ag or forest current use. The green ones are public or privately conserved lands. If we click on one.
Are you on the A&R maps?
I'm on a simpler version of that just shows layers that I've added to a map that I've made myself because I love the A&R Atlas. You should play with that. I love the BioFinder. You should play with that too. You can just type those into Google, but they have a ton of layers in it and it can get a little confusing. So that's why I made the just the flood mapper, just the protected lands mapper for people who wanted to look at that. So if we click on this guy over here, it tells us this is a use value appraisal property. We click right because it tells us there's more. This is a Vermont Land Trust easement. And we click one more. This is owned by William Sayward, who lives in Bedford, New Hampshire. 267 acres. So that's pretty cool. And then you can also see on here, he's got a vast trail that goes through. He's obviously at the top of Braintree Hill because he has 3 little streams that are heading down into Flint Brook here, plus another one over here that's heading into this little brook off of Braintree Hill. So he's at the top of the hill. So you can see a lot of different stuff here on this little map.
Is this layered map available to the public?
Yeah. So again, let's do it one more time so we don't forget. If you type in our initials and maps into Google, the first link that comes up, and I can email this to you, is our mapping page on the Two Rivers website. And then you just scroll down. There's the map we were looking at, for the flooding. And there's the map, the protected lands map that we were just looking at, plus a couple others. And then all BioFinder, the A&R Atlas, the A&R Atlas Lite, the E911 mapper. I don't know who the E911 coordinator is in your town. I am in Plymouth. So all that stuff is on there.
That's amazing. I didn't realize this existed.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll do it right now. Woo, I've got a lot of emails there. I'll get this ready to send to you right now.
Thank you much.
I'll put any other questions? I'll find that thing from Kevin. My office manager is yelling at me to do my timesheet for last week, so I gotta go do that. So, yeah, I got that email ready. I'll send it out to you.
Kevin said that Cornell was redoing the intensity duration curves for Vermont.
Oh, really?
Do you know when they would be out?
No, I don't. I'd have to check on that. But I hadn't heard that. I'm glad Kevin had. That's pretty cool.
I think that's what he said.
Yeah, I'll have to check with him with that. Maybe he got excited. It said too much, but that's pretty cool.
I would like to know how much they're going to change from the previous, and now that we've got good maps at a really good scale, what's that going to do to the curves shown on the Vermont map? Because they just used to be horizontal lines,
right?
The ISO lines for intensity. And I suspect it's going to change much with the contours.
Right.
So I'm very curious as what's, and how that's gonna affect the floodplain.
Right. It'll be interesting. I'm working with the White River Partnership to make sure they're interacting with USGS is the contractor for FEMA who's redoing the floodplain maps in the White River. So we're in contact with those guys. They did some early field work last fall and they'll be doing it all this summer. So you may see them out there. That's what this picture was for. Let me just share this. Boop. Share. Boop. So this was actually, you see that canoe?
Yeah,
Yep. This was taken last fall, pretty late, October 6th, somewhere in Vermont. They don't, they don't tell us, but there's their total station or level, and the guy taking the notes, and then the motor and the the rod holder. So they're really doing it.
but they're doing river depth, I presume, here.
They're probably doing the whole stream channel geometry, so they'll go right across here.
Right, the cross section of the river.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, where is the depth of the river? This is something I didn't realize they were doing data-wise. The cross section of the river bed. Where is that available?
That's in that's a good question. Those are available. You have your floodplain maps, but that's only half of the flood study. The other half is called the flood insurance study, and that has all these distance and depth tables.
Really?
So, yeah, and you can find that too. Most people don't look at that because it's it has all the cross sections, it has all the depth, and it tells you, like, it'll tell you this cross section is just above this bridge. So it's pretty interesting. It's pretty dense, but it's all there.
Huh, that's
So
interesting.
you can put, flood insurance study into Google and read about them.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, good to talk to you, Malcolm. I'll get this email together for you, and I'll talk to Kevin. It may come in a few emails, but we'll be in touch. And Tori's going to be working with Nate to coordinate all your town plan stuff.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Good to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Yep.
I've learned something. Thank you.
Good.
I sign out, leave.
Yeah.